The Great Barrier Reef, larger than the UK and Ireland combined. It's a World Heritage Area and the only living organism that can be seen from space. The diversity of the Great Barrier Reef's stunning marine life is extraordinary. Dugongs, turtles, whales, sharks, almost all of the world's 400 types of coral and 1,500 species of fish all live here. But it's also an area under threat from damaging fishing practices including overfishing, land-based pollution like soil erosion and agricultural runoff, and coral bleaching caused by global warming. Despite being a marine park and a World Heritage Area, until now only 4.5% has been protected from fishing. Now, fishing will be banned in a third of the marine park. That's 11 million hectares. The Great Barrier Reef isn't just one of the world's most precious natural treasures, but one of Australia's most valuable tourism assets, generating more than 4.2 billion Australian dollars annually. More marine sanctuaries mean more fish and other marine life that will continue to improve the region's value and attraction as a tourist hub. Agincourt Reef is just one of nearly 3,000 that make up the huge expanse of the Great Barrier Reef. Concentrating tourism in this area and others like it means that most of the reef remains undisturbed. Every year, tens of thousands of visitors come to this area. The tour guides say this is probably the only way people will ever get to see the reef. They have a great experience and get an education as to what the reef is, what it's all about, and how it works. There is still much work to be done, but creating a network of marine sanctuaries in a third of this marine park is a stunning outcome. It sets a new benchmark in global marine conservation. And it will have very real benefits for the environmental health of the Great Barrier Reef. Now, if you're looking for a present for someone who has everything, this store in Berlin can help you. They sell ants, colonies of them. Ants are easy to look after. They don't take up much room, they're not dirty, and don't make much noise. In Martin Sebaster's opinion, that makes ants perfect pets. This is Europe's only ant shop. Sebaster's customers used to be zoos and research centres, but he quickly realised that more and more people were buying the little creatures for their own homes. He now sells at least 2 colonies per day for €100 each. The cost does vary, with the most expensive, the bull ants, costing €1,400 for a maximum of 25. These not-so-little creatures grow to a length of 3.5 centimetres and have a sting on the end of their tail like that of a wasp. Regional and tropical varieties are also available. Since it might be a little tough to try and stroke these characters, Sebester suggests that new ant owners should let their pets roam around a houseplant. A little water around the base will prevent them from escaping. And should they escape, well, you might just be in for a bit of unusual exercise. As summer begins to sizzle, the paddy fields of Corella come alive with a thunderous noise, the hooves. Usually busy with ploughing fields, these bullocks took part in the Maramari race at Kakur near the city of Cochin. The competition was in 3 categories: Idatu Kaya, Speed and Champion. The team in the first category comprises of 2 bullocks with 3 men handling them. One of the handlers needs to run ahead of the bullocks on the right-hand side to guide them onto the tracks. Each team runs 3 times, and the average time decides who the winner is. The race has become such a hit that it is now a week-long affair. But this festival has not been free of controversies. Animal rights activists approached the High Court to seek a ban on what they called a cruel sport. However, the court allowed the race to be conducted under the watchful eyes of the activists, as well as court-appointed officials. Joseph Ketnath, who owns a pair of bullocks, says he believes the bullocks actually enjoy the change from the drudgery of ploughing the fields. Nuclear physicist Elias Sadiris Haddad says he can determine when an elephant died, as well as its age, by a new carbon dating technique applied to the tusks, a process made possible by the above-ground nuclear tests of the past. Verifying when an elephant died could, he hopes, enable poor countries to resume ivory sales, banned in 1989, through regulations which could stipulate that only tusks from animals dead for a specified period of time could be sold. This could be a huge deterrent to poachers who are unlikely to hoard illegally taken tusks for years. The new dating system relies on traces of carbon-14, which became abnormally abundant in the atmosphere globally because of early nuclear weapons tests. Using a process called accelerator mass spectrometry, a tusk's root and tip are examined to determine when its owner was born and when it expired, by matching the traces of carbon-14 with the amount known to be in the atmosphere at certain times. He says that any tusks from culls could be placed in storage for 10 years to relieve fears that poachers could try to use them as an excuse to mix illegal supplies into the market. A moratorium on Kruger elephant culls was imposed in 1994 when Nelson Mandela was elected South African president. Dressed in elaborate costumes by their owners, 20 cats took part in the first ever competition to mark the launch of the Indonesia Cat Association. Cats were dressed in outfits ranging from baby to Formula One driver, as the owners took them up and down the catwalk. Some looked a little confused. Others seemed oblivious to the commotion they were causing in this shopping mall. Chico, a 10-month-old Persian, slept through most of the event, but woke up a winner. Nestled comfortably in a baby cart and fully clad in baby clothes, Chico took the trophy for Best Dressed Cat, taking home cash prizes and products from sponsors. Chico's owner, Mona Safianti, admitted that her cat's favourite pastime, sleeping, was most likely due to her being overweight and that she needed exercise. Perhaps a few trips up and down the catwalk without the baby cart might get the model figure in trim for next time. It's an exciting time for Bill and Janet Evans as their pets Daisy and BJ became the first passengers on British Airways' pet travel scheme from Bermuda to London. Janet was thrilled at the trip. This British Airways initiative means that there is no longer a 6-month quarantine period, and pets can now travel straight home with their owners after a flight. The scheme requires each animal to have a microchip inserted for identification, rabies vaccine, tick and tapeworm treatment. It's still not as simple as booking a flight and jumping on the next plane. Quite a long process really, at least 6 months, so plenty of preparation is still required. As for Daisy and BJ, they flew home without their brother Wimhurst the cat, that ran away on the morning of the flight to London. The Indian Ocean off the coast of Mauritius. A family of sperm whales is passing through, sailing gracefully on the current of the tide. They're perfectly adapted to their environment. They can travel huge distances and withstand considerable changes in temperature. But they're in grave danger, both from whale hunters and from man-made poisons that have gradually worked their way into the oceans. Most of the danger comes from pesticides. Whales have an abundance of fat tissue and have accumulated the hazardous waste in their bodies. This research vessel is on a mission to investigate man's impact on the sea. Launched by the Ocean Alliance, a US-based whale conservation and research body, the Odyssey set sail in the year 2000. By the time they'd reached Mauritius, the scientists weren't optimistic. They'd analysed samples from sperm whales for traces of toxins and were alarmed by how heavily the oceans are polluted. The scientists track the whales when they are below the surface. They fire a small dart and take a small plug of skin. They then take it to the lab on board where it's cut into several pieces. The samples they collect are then analysed for man-made toxins. One of these is DDT, a highly toxic pesticide and insect killer which isn't water-soluble, so it stays in the environment for a long time after it was first used. DDT-contaminated food may be bad for your health, but in Africa, DDT saves lives. It's still widely used to kill mosquitoes that cause malaria. In a continent where 1 million people die of the disease a year, this is still the cheapest and most effective way to fight the illness. DDT is one of a list of 12 pollutants known as the Dirty Dozen. Education and environmental awareness are some of the key elements of the voyage of the Odyssey. At their stop in Mauritius, the team invited students and government officials on board the yacht and gave them a few tips on how to protect the ocean and the creatures within it. Satis Komyi from the Ministry of Fisheries in Mauritius said he didn't know that they had such a high number of whales around Mauritius. Organic toxins have a devastating effect on whales. They can prevent fetuses from developing properly and can cause cancer, sterility, and birth defects. And it's not just whales who are at risk, but also any other mammal that eats contaminated food, including human beings. As the Odyssey continues on its journey, its scientists hope that the information that the whales are giving them will be acted on to protect not just the ocean's biggest mammals, but mankind too. The crowd who are gathered at the Berlin Zoo are waiting for the stars of the show. Meet Sitara and Amudaya, two young tigers enjoying their first outing. These young Siberian tigers have the rare privilege of growing up in an intact family. Sitara and Amudaya are twin tiger babies, and this was to be the first of many photo shoots. Tigers are normally loners, but Turan is a very cute and balanced father who cares for his family. According to caretakers of the zoo, Turan was present when the babies were born, a rarity in tigers. And 17-year-old Father Turan clearly enjoys the company of his small children. When Sitara or Amudaya get too rough and jump onto their father's back one time too many, he just gets up and withdraws to a more quiet place. Siberian tigers are rare, with only 5,000 left in the wild. They are the largest of the cat family and not easy to keep, requiring about 40 kilograms of meat for each meal. Although called man-eating, tigers actually prefer smaller prey, including porcupines. What do you get a Russian who has everything? A miniature horse to put in a miniature stable in their country home outside of Moscow. You can't ride them and you can't race them, but these mini horses are equine in all things except for size. They're bred to be tiny and good-natured, and they are the latest pets of wealthy Russians who are buying their way into an American tradition of small-scale horse breeding. A venture located outside of Moscow has begun importing these diminutive horses from the United States, where miniature horses have been raised for several hundred years. Not to be confused with ponies, which are generally larger, these horses were originally bred to work in American mine shafts, where their heights of less than a metre was an advantage in the cramped spaces. They say you need to relate to these horses like you would relate to children. It is yet to be seen where the Russians will take to these equine Americans. They haven't caught on in Europe, and so far only a couple have been sold, not even a mini stampede. Still, entrepreneur Herman Gorovoy is hopeful. At the moment, it's mostly Russian show people and well-known politicians who are buying them. The prices are interesting too, to say the least. A horse could cost about $15,000, more than 100 times an average monthly salary in Russia. For that price, it better be a pretty good ride. San Diego Zoo's Flamingo Lagoon became a bit more crowded with the arrival of more than half a dozen new flamingo chicks. The zoo's bird curator was very pleased, as these were the first flamingo chicks in 4 years. They were the newest addition to the zoo's flock of more than 70 birds. Visitors to the zoo were treated to glimpses of the white downy flamingo chicks at the popular Caribbean flamingo exhibit. Caribbean flamingos are the most colourful of the 5 different species of flamingos. The chicks will eventually become more pinkish in colour. Although flamingos are not on the endangered list, their natural habitat is continuously under threat by the activities of man. Flamingos live in lagoons or lakes where there is lots of mud and water. They use a variety of habitats: mangrove swamps, tidal flats and sandy islands in the intertidal zone. The depth of the water is especially important, not only for feeding, but for nesting. Lakes may be far inland or near the sea. The flamingo's pink or reddish feather colour comes from its diet, which is high in alpha and beta-carotene. Flamingos can survive in tropical and subtropical climates.